The Inhumans episode 7, Havoc in the Hidden Land. This episode, of course, is the penultimate episode of the season, possibly even the series, but it's leading into our final episode next week, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't like an insanely epic episode, I thought, but they definitely did some stuff where it was like, okay, some of the stuff that's happening here, maybe it'll get resolved in the next episode, but I felt like there was so much going on that it was like, I feel like this is stuff that this is the type of stuff where it's like it builds up and has an impact on the finale, but there are definitely some elements here that are like, changing the entire series sort of stuff. So we have quite a few elements going on. Iran is ultimately kind of swaying between her decision to, ultimately side with Maximus, and she's now kind of regretting that decision. And so she ends up working with Karnak in this episode, and he utilizes her healing abilities to try to bring back Gorgon, which seemingly fails, but of course we find out that it actually worked by the end of the episode. We just have to see if he's still himself. He looks normal, he didn't physically change or anything, so it seems like, ultimately he just came back to life, but we'll have to see how well that worked. Transferring someone else's power into, someone else, I'm sure is very different, and then you add on top of that the fact that that someone else was also dead. So who knows if he's 100% himself, if he's going to be like this crazy, almost like zombified version or something. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But, it's definitely a huge change for her character. Like, her whole thing has been, I'm with Maximus, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And that's certainly shifted in this episode. Maximus himself has gone through some interesting moments in this one where he starts off and is like, okay, Gorgon has died. I have to kind of make a show of gratitude and respect to this person because that's what a king would do, which I thought was an interesting line because it was like, that's what a good king would do, but that's not what Maximus would do. It's just what, a good ruler would do. So, he kind of puts on the show because I don't think he really cared that much, but he's like, yeah, Gorgon died, and, it's tragic, and we have to honor him and stuff like that. And he kind of puts it in, some elements where it's like, he doesn't make it like 100%. He was the greatest person ever. But it was like, okay, so, he does what he felt a good ruler should do. And, the process kind of continues throughout the episode. And then with this death comes the parlay. And it's like, all right, well, we want to meet. Your brother wants to meet you. Like, we're going to come to Adelan. Everything's going to be good. They end up bringing Declan to Adelan as well. And it's like, all right, we have this parlay. There's meant to be, no bloodshed. It's just they make an arrangement. You either accept it or deny it, and that's all there is to it. And at first, it seemed like Maximus accepted it, which I thought was very interesting. So I was like, man, this should be something. Like, if that's really what he's going to do, if he accepts it. But of course, he just turns around and is like, all right, well, yeah, I didn't accept anything. I just rescued someone that you took prisoner. I deny, your request. And that was pretty much all there was to it. And I was like, okay, this should be interesting still to see how this plays out. Because I was very interested, like, if this is legitimately what happens where it turns out that his motive was totally just to become an inhuman, that would be something to watch for sure. Because when he accepted it, people were, like murmurs and all that stuff. And I was like, maybe Iran was right. Maybe it was like, his motives really were just to do that. And, in that moment it seemed that way. And then, and that's the weird thing with this character that's actually entertaining. Sometimes it's hard to tell if he's just doing it for himself to become inhuman again, or if he really, if he's doing it for the people, or if he cares at all. Like, I know he's definitely doing it for himself, because that's why they talk about, like, what were his true motives. It really was to become inhuman because he wanted to have that power. But along with that would allow him to, it would still allow him to change everything. And it seems like he cares, but at the same time, it's like this weird back and forth. And, they constantly bring it up where it's like he's talking about getting rid of the caste system, but of course he's basically forcing people to be like this new version of the military to go after the royal family. So it's this weird in-between ground where he's like, we're doing it for the people, but the people, he talks about how the people have to fight for their own freedom. It can't just be given to them. And so there are a lot of different ways where it's like you could see it where he might care about the people, but when it comes down to it, I would say he cares about himself. So when that moment happened in front of everyone, I thought for sure he was actually accepting it, like, okay, that's all that really mattered. But he turns around, and that way he kind of gets the best of both worlds. And that's kind of, once again, where it goes back and forth. That's exactly what makes me think that, he does at least care a little bit about actually destroying the caste system, because he could have accepted that if that was the only thing he wanted. But at the same time, he does also want to be king, so it might not have anything to do with the people. It could still just be him, because they're like there are multiple levels to it, where it's like he wants to be king and he also wants to be inhuman. So it could have just been the two factors that involve him instead of the one factor that involves the rest of Adelan. But it was still an interesting moment. He gives Declan and is like, hey, there can't be bloodshed here. So everybody takes off, and then that's where we have Varan talking with Karnak, and it's like, I can tell that you aren't exactly, feeling the position, that you chose. It's like you don't feel like this is exactly what it was meant to be anymore because of how things have started to devolve. And of course, things are absolutely insane at this point. One of the big changes in this episode is that apparently the whole series so far has just been like a whole plan, like this giant plan from episode 1. It was Black Bolt and Triton with like this super secret deal in this insane super secret bunker that even Medusa didn't know about. And the whole series has basically been this plan that Black Bolt had, where he knew that his little brother was trying to, take over the throne and then, kind of get rid of the royal family. So they set it up, they make it seem as if, Triton is actually killed off, and all of that was just a big ploy. And so Triton comes back. He was actually kind of cool. They have him coming in, he's swimming super fast, just like above the water and stuff. But he had a really cool scene at the end where he was like full, it was like Assassin's Creed mode because he had the cloak and everything. But I was like, okay, he's actually pretty cool. He's a good fighter. So we find out that Black Bolt and Triton have like this super secret plan this entire time. Black Bolt knew what his brother was going to do, and he led basically the beginning of this revolution was the fake death of Triton, and then that kind of sent Gorgon away, and then that kind of kickstarted everything else. Of course, there are like 100 million things in between that Black Bolt had like zero plans for, I'm sure, because there's so many moments where like either somebody pretty much everybody random being killed off, but Gorgon also being killed off. Was like, yeah, well, look where that plan got you, because there were a million different elements that you didn't consider. I don't know, it's like he just thought there were going to be like some little coups and assassination attempts. It was like, no, Maximus had some real serious plans. He has a scientist who can allow people to transfer their abilities or go through Terrigenesis again. So there's just a lot of different stuff where Black Bolt was just like, oh, my little brother's trying to revolt. We'll let him think he got the first step off, and then we'll figure it out from there. And it's like, there have been so many absolute disasters that they had. And I'm like, I'm sure he didn't account for any of that crap. So, very interesting. Probably, I don't know, it's a crazy idea, but maybe he could have involved Karnak with this plan, but he chose not to. He went with himself and Triton, and things basically just fell apart 100%, I would say. Ultimately, none of them died except for Gorgon, but of course, fortunately, he does end up coming back, and like I said, we'll have to see if it's normal Gorgon or crazy, weird, zombified Gorgon or what. But, this whole super secret plan ultimately just keeps failing, I think. I don't know if his plan was to let Declan go, because I think they mentioned it afterwards that Karnak knew how to fix the problem. It was like, there's a flaw in Declan's plan, but we can let Maximus figure that out, and then I can basically perfect it. So even that wasn't a part of Black Bolt's plan, was like to let Maximus go through Terrigenesis again and be like grotesque or deformed, where he can't even fight back as just a normal human. So none of that was a part of his plan either. It was just like, it screwed up. He thought his brother would accept it, I guess, or maybe it was a part of the plan. It's really hard to tell at this point. I just can't tell. But I was like, all right, so that kind of breeds a bit of mistrust between specifically Medusa and Black Bolt. Like everyone else, like Karnak is kind of like, if he did it this way, then there must be a reason. And Crystal is kind of just like, she's just the young kid where it's like, I don't really know what to think about it. And Medusa's just straight up pissed, where it's like, I'm supposed to be the queen. I didn't know about this plan. I didn't know about even a bunker. It's just a place that they have, and she never knew about it, just for cases like this with Maximus. And it's like, it's just a bunker. Did he just not trust her, or like what was the deal with that? So it breeds a bit of mistrust from her side of things, and she's definitely pissed, and she's been trying to kind of push things back towards kind of what her parents fought for. And she even gives the explanation where they do this kind of weird flashback thing where it's like they have the scene going, but they play the flashback over it. I thought that looked so weird, because they were actually cutting back and forth between Medusa and Black Bolt talking. So it was like, I can see the flashback, and I can see them talking, and I was like, I don't know why they did that. They should have just had her talk, or just done like a full-on narration and just re-shown the thing. Because I was like, I know what she's talking about when she says, like, remember when I first came to the quiet room? It was like, okay, that's when they first met and stuff. Maybe with her saying that specific name, it's not exactly familiar to people, because I just happen to know it is from the comics, so I figured that that's what that room was. And so it was like, okay, when they say it, it's like, alright, so it's the quiet room. it's where he stays. And so it was just an interesting little moment where just the way they edited it, I thought looked weird. I was like, they should have either just played the flashback with the narration or just played her, talking to him, because they did the cuts as if we could see it perfectly. Like they show her talking, and then they cut to him, with reactions. And I'm like, well, there's no reason to cut back and forth if you're just gonna show another scene on top of it. So it just looked really weird to have it like half and half like that. I was like, it should have just been the full flashback with narration. But she goes through that and she's kind of talking to him, once again going down the path of her changing into what the people really want them to be and hoping to kind of do the same for Black Bolt. So I did like that scene, and ultimately we'll see how it plays out because we only got one episode left. So the whole big thing with the promo is like we're going to Earth and all this stuff. So someone has to come out on top, and I assume it'll be Black Bolt, Medusa, and the rest of the family. But we'll just have to see if Black Bolt does officially decide to change and how that's going to play out, especially with them being on Earth, which may or may not matter because, as I've said for like the past couple weeks, maybe we won't get a season 2. This might just be the end of it. But still a good episode. I'm enjoying where it's headed, especially going into the season finale. There was a lot of stuff that happened here. And like I said, I felt like it's possible that all this stuff can get resolved, where it's like, this is what happens, all the stuff with Gorgon. But like everything that's happening, I don't know if I truly expect that to get resolved by the end of the next episode. Even with Maximus and, Iran not really being on his side anymore and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know if every single thing is going to get resolved by the end of the next episode. But I hope it does, especially because of the idea that there may or may not be a season 2. But I really want that just, for the sake of it just being closed off in general, I think that would just be better. But I am excited to see where it goes, how all this stuff is supposed to play out, what's going to happen with Maximus, if he really will get the chance to go through Terrigenesis. We've seen it work with Gorgon, but of course that was after Karnak. I mean, basically all he did was take the blood and put it into Gorgon. Like, they kind of used Terrigenesis. Like, I don't remember them even getting a crystal, but technically they had that giant box, so I'm sure there's just a random scene where he had a crystal, so that's what they used. But it's like, okay, he just put her blood into his system, and that was kind of it. So, how is that going to play out for Maximus with whatever this random flaw is that's in Declan's design? So I am looking forward to that playing out if he does end up going through Terrigenesis again, which I assume he will, but it's really hard to say. Like, who knows how it's going to play out? He talked about, like, okay, well, I'll pick my powers and do Terrigenesis, and it's like, hey, I don't even know how this stuff works. You could die from that. So they're still going through that process by the time we hit the end of the episode and Gorgon is revealed to be alive. So them seeing that work will probably kind of push things forward for Maximus in a better direction, because Declan will be able to test Gorgon and be like, oh, this is something that I missed. I don't know who did it, but this is how to perfect it and give you any ability that you want. So that's my theory on how things are going to play out, but I am excited in general. But of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below, let me know your favorite parts about your least favorite parts. And of course, I would love to know your theories for the season finale. I also want to know just what you guys want to see for the season finale. If you're a comic reader, if you're not, just what you want to see happen in this final episode of the season. And like I said, definitely your theories, because I feel like Maximus has to get powers. Like, with him being the main villain, I don't see what else they could do, because they aren't going to be mixing in, like, all the movie characters and every other comic book character. It's not like the actual comic books. So it's not like, oh, everything's fine with the Inhumans, and then they go off and fight other people. Like, I'm sure they'll do the team up even if this show gets canceled. I'm sure they'll do the team up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff in the future, because that's what brought in the Inhumans. But I don't know, it just makes me wonder, like, where all of that is going to kind of fizzle out. Like, Maximus kind of has to remain the villain in general, right? Because if he's no longer the villain, then they just go on being the Inhumans doing nothing, because they don't have the rights to just be like, yeah, let's just throw in this random enemy that the Inhumans have to fight. It's not going to be the Inhumans versus the X-Men. Like, we are not going to have that, which is super unfortunate. But, like, that's just not going to be a thing. So I assume Maximus has to get powers, and he has to ultimately survive the season finale, because they won't really have another villain unless they, just decide to pick someone random who goes through Terrigenesis a second time as well to get more powerful or something like that. But otherwise, it was just like, oh, well, he's dead, and then they won, and now they're on Earth, and then there's like no conflict outside of them just flat out fighting humans. And that's really the only way they can probably bring things in as far as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., depending on where that's going, because they went to space by the end of the season. So who really knows what the heck is going to happen there. But Like I said, want to know what you guys thought about this episode, and of course would love to know your theories and just what you guys hope to see in the season finale. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.